Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We have obviously a lot to get in order here, and we welcome you all. We are pleased to welcome back Father David Hussey of the Trinity Episcopal Church here in Pierre and Fort Pierre, a dear friend of mine, to pray for and over and with us. And as is fitting, from Winter, South Dakota, we have our page of the day who will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our great nation's flag, Madison Morehart.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty God, to you all hearts are open, all desires known, and from you no secrets are hid. Cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of your Holy Spirit, that we may perfectly love you and worthily magnify your holy name through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Senator Boland, Kamak, Cronin, Kurd, Ewing, Frerichs, Greenfield, Haverly, Heiner, Jensen, Kennedy, Killer, Klum, Colbeck, Langer, Maher, Monroe, Nelson, Neseba, Netherton, Norstrup, Otten, Partridge, Peters, Rush, Russell, Sohold, Solano, Stalzer, Sutton, Tapio, Tiedemann, White, Wick, and Youngberg. We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Approval of the journal.
Mr. President, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Secretary of the Senate has had under consideration the Senate Journal of the 12th day. All errors, typographical or otherwise, are duly marked in the temporary journal for correction, and we hereby move the adoption of the report. Senator Greenfield, Chair.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone, again, for your patience as we get back in rolling. There was no session yesterday, so this is really like a Monday for a number of us on our team here. We'd like to especially welcome everyone who's here physically. We'll do some individual introductions. And then also thank South Dakota Public Broadcasting, our friends there, for the live stream, both audio as well as video, because we know a lot of people are watching in real time, and I'm so grateful for their support. First of all, I'd like to recognize Dr. Nord. Doctor, where are you? You're back up there. There you are again. So everyone understands, first of all, a number of us have known Dr. Nord for many years, but he is one of our doctors of the day and has rotated through here many, many years, taking care of us. And the doctors volunteer their time, and their partners back home, in this case in Rapid City, cover for them. And we're very grateful not only for you, Dr. Nord, in taking care of us. Dr. Nord, as a family practice physician out in Rapid City, has been a tremendous leader in the area of smoke-free environments and individual health. He's also an Army surgeon, Army military officer in that regard, has been a leader in the Medical Association. And a lot of people don't understand there's a tremendous amount of education through our med school and nursing schools that occur, and the doctors involved as faculty out there. So thank you very much for being with us and taking care of us. Dr. Nord. And we have from AARP, South Dakota Lobby Day. Everybody with AARP, stand up, please, if you're able. And we welcome... You know, I really don't care. I'm not running for office anymore. The funny thing about that is Senator Sutton is in a wheelchair, so we do have a number of people that come on AARP that get up there through things we call elevators. We have over 100 AARP South Dakota volunteers and members from across our great state here today. It's their annual lobbying day and opportunity. I know a number of everybody was down there today, and it's always great to have you here. I do have to tell you, however, that for a lot of reasons that a number of you know with me, I'm not allowed to have fidget spinners. My wife has banned them. And so I love them dearly. They help me with my attention issues. But we thank you so much for your gift and your lobbying and all that you do. AARP. And then we have over here the AGC Highways, American General Contractors, right? Heavy utility chapter right here. They have a social tonight at 5:15, dinner at 6:15 at the Ramkota. AGC, you all up here? Stand up, please. Thanks. I wish to tell you a story because I won't be able to make it tonight, but we meet with the rating agencies nationally in New York City every January, and they talked about the impact of what any federal changes would be doing for us, and because of your work, we're way ahead in terms of shovel-ready projects in the event that there is an infrastructure bill, and we told them that obviously that helps our economy because of how far ahead you are and the ability to work with our Department of Transportation. So thank you very much. We also like to recognize credit union associations of the Dakotas on behalf of Senator Netherton. Are they here, the credit union folks? Great to see you. Credit unions, please give them a round of applause. And it's Madison Day, DSU Day. Madison. Is the whole city here? I know the mayor, I saw everybody. Just a big day for the Mad Lab signing. On behalf of Senator Youngberg, we'd like to welcome Madison. It did not get on the social calendar, but tonight at Ramkota from 5 to 7, there's a reception there, and there's obviously a number of them, so please stop in and talk to everybody from that great city. And again, there was a tremendous bill signing there today for the future of our state and the epicenter of that in Madison. So thank you very much. And it's Yankton Day. Senator Sutton and Senator Curd, would you come up front here? Again, there's the National Field Archery Association is headquartered in what city? Yankton. Mother city of the Dakotas until Bismarck stole it, those thieves. And guess what happened to them? They ended up in North Dakota. But the first annual, thanks to Mr. Cole and everyone, the first annual House versus Senate archery battle last year was won accordingly by... Here, on behalf of Yankton and Yankton Archery, Yankton Day champions, I'll come and bring that down to you. The Senate's a winner! Okay, the challenge will begin. Obviously, we have leadership from Mount Marty and our school districts, our county and our city people, progressive growth. A lot of folks here today when you stop through. And we have another champion opportunity, right? That would be good. Well, the great thing about Yanktonians is we're all straight arrows, right, Senator Kennedy? That's and I think we saw Senator, Representative, and Senator, and then Representative Bernie Hunoff. Good to see you, leader. And it's always great to see Representative Jackie Sly. Jackie, great to see you, dear. Any other personal privileges that you have that I've missed? I think I've got all of the intros. I know a number of you need to make the choice to go to the House. What we're doing preliminarily is a lot of paperwork that actually is done by the computer now, but needed to be done orally before we had computers so individuals could keep track of what was happening relative to what bills came out of committees and where bills are assigned and what sort of action. And so the next order of business is the report of what happened in today's committees, report of standing committees.
The Committee on Judiciary reports that it has had under consideration Senate Bills 104 and 111, recommends due pass, and Senate Bill 139 recommends due pass to be placed on the consent calendar. Senator Russell, Chair. Committee on Commerce and Energy has had under consideration Senate Bill 119 and recommends due pass as amended, and recommends deferring Senate Bills 113 and 120 to the 41st legislative day. Senator Jensen, Chair. And the Committee on Education recommends that the Senate advise and consent to the following confirmations to the South Dakota Board of Technical Education. Rod Bauer of Kennebec, Dana Dykehouse of Sioux Falls, Doug Eckeren of Yankton, Bob Fain of Watertown, Ed Mallett of Watertown, Scott Peterson of Belfouche, Terry Sabers of Mitchell, and finally, Diana Vanderwitty of Sioux Falls. And all these appointments are to be placed on the consent calendar. And the Committee on Legislative Procedure reports that the Office of Engrossing and Enrolling has carefully compared Senate Bill 18 and finds the same correctly enrolled. Senator Greenfield, Chair.
Messages, please.
Mr. President, I have the honor to transmit HCR 1005, which has been adopted by the House, and your concurrence is requested. I have the honor to transmit House Bills 1081, 1095, 1097, 1101, 1102, 1105, and HJR 1001, which have passed the House, and your favorable consideration is requested. And I have the honor to transmit Senate Bill 18, which has passed the House without change. Respectfully, Sandra J. Zinter, Chief Clerk.
No, I don't have one. Do you have one? No. Motions and resolutions, please.
Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 6. A concurrent resolution recognizing the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10, 2018, and the celebration of Human Rights Day. Senator Nessebar moves that SCR 6, as found on page 221 of the Senate Journal, be adopted.
Is there a second? Okay, everyone, before I call on Senator Nessebar, there's a lot of side conversations now. We could... I think everybody has left that decided to, and we got nice boomeranging. Got good Yankton boomeranging. Okay, Senator Nessebar, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start with a couple of quotations this afternoon. On December 10th, 1986, then President Ronald Reagan had this to say: "The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a triumph for the higher aspirations of mankind, is but words on paper unless we're willing to act to see that it is taken seriously. We owe it to ourselves and to those who sacrifice so much for our liberty to keep America in the forefront of this battle." Some more words of support for this document came from President George W. Bush on September 25th, 2007. He said, "The Universal Declaration of Human Rights stands as a landmark achievement in the history of human liberty." This past summer, I was honored to be a part of our delegation to the International Legislators Forum in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I was able to travel there with Senator Frerichs and Senator Wick and Representative Duvall. While there, we participated in sessions on tiling, subsurface water management, criminal justice reform, and alternative energies. We also had the opportunity to visit the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, and it is that visit which is related to the topic at hand today. According to the Canadian statute authorizing its creation, the purpose of the Canadian Museum of Human Rights is to explore the subject of human rights with a special but not exclusive reference to Canada in order to enhance the public's understanding of human rights, to promote respect for others, and to encourage reflection and dialogue. Built at a cost of over 350 million Canadian dollars, the museum was inspired by the 1982 Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That charter, in turn, was explicitly built upon the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that turns 70 years old this coming December 10th. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a copy of which is delivered to your desk, represents the first comprehensive agreement among nations as to the specific rights and freedoms of all human beings. It epitomizes the values that underpin our democratic government and mimics some of those beliefs found in the Declaration of Independence and our own U.S. Constitution. The first article, it's the blue sheet on your desk, the first article states unequivocally that all human beings are born free. No person ought to be deprived of their freedom. In Article 3, the right to life, liberty, and security of persons are guaranteed to all, and Article 21 declares that the will of the people is the basis for authority in government. The Universal Declaration affirms values that our founders held dear. Just as the founders created the Constitution to defend these rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights works to secure these rights for individuals all around the world. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights also outlines specific protections from government intrusion into individuals' private lives. Articles 19 and 20 read similar to our First Amendment, guaranteeing to all the right to freedom of association and freedom of opinion. Articles 12 and 17 protect the people from arbitrary seizure of property and arbitrary interference in privacy, similar to our Fourth Amendment. Articles 9 and 10 protect the people from arbitrary arrest or detention and guarantee to all a right to a fair trial, emulating our own Fifth and Sixth Amendments. Not only do these articles epitomize the values that underpin democratic government, but they also offer specific protections to all people of the world that were originally laid out in our U.S. Bill of Rights. The Universal Declaration also supports values that South Dakotans hold, right? Article 16 declares that the family is the natural and fundamental unit of society. We as South Dakotans value family as an economic and social unit, and we recognize that families act as an essential support system for the leaders of tomorrow. For the last 7 years, in the Sioux Falls area, students have learned about the Declaration and human rights and have had an opportunity to express their thoughts in writing in the Human Rights Day essay contest for 7th and 8th graders. This essay contest is sponsored by over a dozen civic organizations, and I was pleased to attend the award celebration this last Human Rights Day on December 10th at the Sioux Falls Multicultural Center. The contest has led to many discussions in classes and around dinner tables, and I want to congratulate all of the young writers who have participated in this contest. I especially offer kudos to this year's past year's winners, 7th graders, Makaya Bishanan, Bella Martinez, Shafrir Pervez, and the 8th graders that were winners this past year, Patrick Vogel, Annika Jacobson, and Davis Schaefer. I urge you all to make an affirmative vote in recognizing the 70th anniversary of the signing of this document. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Boland, good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer an amendment C6AA.
Second.
Comments on the motion to amend, Senator Boland.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I just would appreciate the comments of the good senator, but I do believe that there are a number of phrases, words, ideas, concepts in this particular document that could perhaps be twisted and evaluated in a way that might make some of us have second thoughts about it. So that's why I'm bringing this particular amendment. I know the good senator referenced Ronald Reagan and his statements. I would like to reference President Reagan as well. You know, in 1980, there was, and I'm old enough to remember that election. In 1980, there was quite a controversy in the United States in regards to what was some people called the Equal Rights Amendment. And Ronald Reagan said, I'm for equal rights, but not necessarily this amendment. And that is how I would like to capsulize my views in regards to this particular document, which is referenced in the resolution. I am clearly for human rights, but not necessarily every idea, concept, and phrase that is included. There are many, there's some things that I think we should really question in this particular document. I would agree with the good senator from District 19. The words that they said last week, the words that we pass here do have real meaning. And so I'm offering this amendment. I broached this subject with the good senator last week. He has, to the best of my knowledge, unless he has changed, he has agreed to the language of the amendment. This now, with the adoption of the amendment, I believe that we can all support the resolution. I know I can. So I urge you to adopt the resolution, and then I would urge our full support for this resolution as amended. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Boland. Further remarks on the motion to amend? Senator Nessebar?
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the good senator from Canton. I think that the language that he offers gives clarity, and if passing this amendment will gain his support, I'm very happy to accept the words as amended.
Thank you. Further remarks on the motion to amend? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is Senator Boland's motion to amend marked Charlie 6 Alpha Alpha. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Senate concurrent resolution number 6 is so amended. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is Senator Nessebar's motion that SCR 6 be adopted. Those in favor of adopting SCR 6 as amended will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, you please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Klum? Aye. Colbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Monroe? No. Nelson? Nay. Nessebar? Aye. Netherton? Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tapio? Tapio?
Tapio is excused.
Tiedemann? Aye. White? Wick? Aye. Youngberg? Aye.
Killer's excused.
Mr. President, there are 30 yeas, 3 nays, and 2 excused.
Senator Nessebar's motion that SCR 6, now as amended, be adopted, having received a majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed and so adopted. I'd like to welcome, we have with us youth from Rutland School, is that correct? Would you stand up and welcome to the Senate? And the city leadership programs are always great. I understand Senator Youngberg has told me that we have Leadership Madison here. Is that correct? Excellent. Stand up. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. Nice to see you, Mayor, again, and nice to have talked with you earlier today. And also, we have former Senator Eldon Nygaard here. Eldon, good to see you, sir. Didn't recognize you without your hat, Eldon. Oh, there you did it. Sweet. That's great. Always put your forest fires out. Okay. Next motion, please.
House Concurrent Resolution Number 1005, a concurrent resolution commending and recognizing the numerous contributions made by South Dakota social workers and recognizing March 2018 as National Social Work Month.
Referral to committee has been waived. It'll be put on tomorrow's calendar. Thank you.
Senator Greenfield moves that Senate Bills 2, 3, 4, 6, 29, 40, 55, 81, 99, and 100 be referred from the Committee on Joint Appropriations to the Committee on Senate Appropriations.
All those in favor of the referral signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Senator Greenfield moves that Senate Bill 143 be referred from the Committee on Retirement Laws to the Committee on State Affairs.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Senator Curd moves that SCR 7 be deferred till Tuesday, February 6th, the 18th legislative day.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Senator Curd moves that House Bill 1034 be deferred to Wednesday, January 31st, the 14th legislative day, and to stay on the consent calendar.
All those in favor of that deferral signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
And one more, Senator Curd moves that Senate Bills 64 and 78 be placed to follow Senate Bill 105 on today's calendar.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. I'm going to pause on this last one because that's the debate order today, if you didn't catch this. So when we get to second reading, after 105, 64 and 78 will follow 105. So we'll go 105, 64, 78, and then we'll proceed after that. So it'll be 105, we'll call 64, 78, 28, 45, 48, etc. Blue 57. Omaha. Consideration of committee reports.
Senator Curd moves that the reports of the Standing Committee on Education on Senate Bills 46, 80, and 89, and the Standing Committee on Judiciary on Senate Bills 61 and 87 be adopted.
All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. We have first reading of Senate bills. We just have one bill that needs to be read its title in open session and where the President Pro Tem has assigned it. Please proceed. First reading.
Senate Bill 174, an act to make an appropriation to help veterans and certain others.
President Pro Tem has assigned the Senate Bill 174 to Senate appropriations. And Senate Bill 152, Senators, has been withdrawn in accordance with Joint Rule 6 Bravo, TAC 1.1. SB 152 has been withdrawn. I have a message here from Senator Wick that, is it Eli? Where's Eli? He's just hanging in here. Eli Pieper, who's from Gary. If you've never been to Gary, you need to be here, but welcome back. He was a page last year. Great to see you. Thanks. Our next item is first reading of House bills. Again, we need to read these in open session because there was no computer keeping track of these bills. These are House bills that passed, have come over here for first reading of title. They have numbers and then where we're putting them into committee. We have to do it according to the Constitution this way, so people could have kept track of them. Now it's automatically into the computer once the assignments are taking place. We still need to comply with the Constitution, of course, so please proceed with first reading of House bills.
House Bill 1081, an act to repeal the sunset clause regarding the recreational use of non-meandered waters. House Bill 1095, an act to revise certain provisions regarding clerk magistrate jurisdiction. 1097, an act to revise certain provisions regarding magistrate court jurisdiction over vulnerable adult protective or restraining orders. House Bill 1101, an act to revise certain provisions regarding used motorcycles offered for sale at an event. 1102, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the use and display of the Great Seal of South Dakota. 1105, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the validation of absentee ballot signatures. And finally, HJR 1001, a joint resolution proposing and submitting to the voters an amendment to the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, removing the legislature's authority to set legislator salaries for a regular legislative session.
So the respective House bills have been assigned by the President Pro Tem to these committees. Agricultural and Natural Resource will hear 1081, Commerce 1101, Judiciary 1095, 1097, Local Government 1102, 1105, and State Affairs will hear House Joint Resolution 1001. Next order of business is what we call the consent calendar. We had one bill deferred to tomorrow, but our consent calendar is comprised of bills that passed out of committee unanimously. They cannot require any money involved or a two-thirds vote, and we do this for efficiency purposes and non-controversial bills. We vote in the Senate on all the bills at the same time, And anyone can answer questions and ask questions, but it's non-debatable. Again, it's for efficiency. If there's a desire, any senator may remove the bill. We don't hear up here that anybody has removed a bill for debate for tomorrow, so we will proceed with the consent calendar except for 1034, which was deferred till tomorrow.
House Bill 1030, an act to provide for the cancellation of certain uncollectible unemployment insurance contributions. 1015, an act to repeal the use of explosives, pyrotechnics, and fireworks for the protection of sunflower crops from depredating birds. House Bill 1035, an act to repeal certain provisions and regulations related to labeling requirements for feed. House Bill 1037, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the South Dakota State Fair. House Bill 1046, an act to allow certain resident farmers or ranchers to receive a big game license during the Black Hills deer season. And House Bill 1047, an act to revise certain provisions defining fur-bearing animals.
House Bills 1030, 1015, 1035, 1037, 1046, and 1047, having received a second reading, are all up for consideration and final passage. Any questions on any of these bills? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of House Bills 1030, 1015, 1035, 1037, 1046, and 1047. Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Klum? Aye. Kolbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. And Youngberg? Aye. Mr. President, there are 33 yeas, 2 excused.
Thank you. House Bills 1030, 1015, 1035, 1037, 1046, and 1047, all having received a majority vote of the members-elect, are all hereby declared passed. Title questions? Hearing none, I'll approve all of the titles. And now we're on to our debate calendar today. Thank you so much.
Senate Bill 105, an act to authorize a healthcare practitioner to administer a toxicology test to an infant under certain circumstances.
Senate Bill 105, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Happy yesterday birthday, Senator Soholt. Good to see you. I hope you had a fun day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did. Senators, I bring before you Senate Bill 105, which is an act to do a toxicology test on the most vulnerable in our society, little babies that have just been born. Unfortunately, sometimes there are issues where the mother has struggled with addiction, and that baby is born and maybe exhibiting signs that perhaps something has gone on when that baby's been in utero. Currently, under state law, when medical professionals identify that perhaps there is an issue, if they cannot get consent from the mother to do a toxicology test, this bill says that in those circumstances, medical professionals could proceed forward to really assure the quality of life for that baby. There's a lot of reasons that it would be difficult to not know what is going on. We may understand that the baby's having seizures, but we don't know if it's from a toxicology perspective, that there have been drugs during the pregnancy, or is there something else going on? So there could be very costly tests. Also, treating without really knowing a differential diagnosis would be just like treating in the dark and perhaps subjecting the infant to treatments and procedures that are not necessary. What this bill does is first try to obtain consent from the mother. This would be under situations where medical professionals, in assessing an infant, and this is up to 28 days of life, because that is the neonate period as defined by statute, the first 28 days of life. So this would be if there was reason to suspect that this child has been exposed, that a toxicology exam could be done, even if we did not have consent from the mother. And the reason for this is twofold. One, that we could appropriately treat the infant, and second, that we could do a report through our child abuse neglect statute, that we could go in, support that family, not in punitive measure, but to get help for the mother and to assure the safety of the baby if they are going into that home situation again. You may ask, how is this done on an infant? Well, it's really done as non-invasively as possible. Typically, it's with what's called the first meconium stool. In other words, the first time that the infant would poop, which is usually within 2 days. The only time that there would be perhaps a blood stick, a prick of blood to do a toxicology test, is if for some reason the baby had not had that first meconium stool and we really needed to understand what was going on. So what this bill is about protecting the most vulnerable in our state, the neonates that really cannot speak for themselves, that we need to treat with appropriate measures, and also to be able to provide support to that family for safety and well-being of that baby moving forward. I will stand by for any questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Soholt. Further remarks on Senate Bill 105? Senator Kennedy, good afternoon, sir. Happy Yankton Day.
Happy Yankton Day as well. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the prime sponsor.
Yes, sir. State your question, please.
My question is whether this toxicology test is necessary for treatment of the infant, or if appropriate treatment for the infant after birth could be provided without the necessity of a toxicology test.
Senator Soholt, do you care to answer the question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's a very good question, and thank you for posing it. Yes, when we would have any signs and symptoms that we don't know what is going on, treatment can be provided, but if they're thinking it's seizures, and it could just be treated and they go into some anti-seizure medications, versus a toxicology test that would tell us that we just need to use Narcan. So in these situations, a differential diagnosis, I think any kind of situation can be treated just with symptoms, but it's much better to understand what is happening. And also for that infant moving forward, for protection of that baby, to provide support to that family, because right now our medical professionals are just assuming, is this a situation where there are drugs that have been used in utero where we could rule that out? And should we report to Child Protection Services when we don't really know, but we just have a suspicion? Maybe the symptoms aren't enough that we would have to go in with the big gun medications or further testing such as an MRI or an EEG. So I would say that it's a cost avoidance in the differential diagnosis. It's an understanding of what are we really dealing with versus just let's just suppose and try to treat in that framework, and also for protecting the children.
Senator Kennedy, you have the floor, sir.
May I ask a follow-up
Yes,
question?
sir.
Thank you. Do you have any evidence, any information about whether or not imposing this sort of a circumstance on a mother might cause a mother who has been using some sort of illegal drug to avoid a hospital-based birth or a birth that's attended by appropriate medical care?
Senator Soholt, do you care to answer the question?
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I do not have any definitive evidence.
Senator Kennedy, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, and I'll just be brief. I believe this bill is absolutely well-intentioned, but I'm concerned about turning healthcare providers into evidence gatherers for cases, even limited to cases involving the Department of Social Services, Child Protective Services, and the potential deprivation of parental rights or maybe even termination of parental rights. I'm not sure that there wouldn't also be the possibility of criminal charges arising out of a toxicology report generated in this way. I'm also very concerned that this might intimidate certain people and cause them to withdraw from the appropriate care they need and that their babies need attendant to birth. And I think that's a significant risk we need to be aware of. I can't quantify it any better than the prime sponsor can, but I know that risk exists, and it makes me concerned.
Thank you, sir. Further remarks? Senator Curd, good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, Mr. President. Well, if my colleague from Sioux Falls would let me piggyback on her answer to the question the good senator from Yankton County posed. When I went to medical school, we spent a ton of time learning about a thing called history and physical, and the whole purpose behind learning how to take a good history and perform a physical exam and order the appropriate test was to arrive at a diagnosis. And the reason to arrive at a diagnosis is to make sure that you're treating with specificity. Back when I first started practicing medicine, we used to treat people with antibiotics through what we'd call a shotgun approach, where we'd give them all different kinds of antibiotics before we really knew what the offending organism was or what the treatment was. And that's led to certainly many unintended consequences. Antibiotic-resistant organisms because people got exposed to them when they didn't need to be. It's delayed treatment protocols. It's increased the cost and the burden of the healthcare system. And we've learned a lot over the last 20 years or so. So now we try and treat with specificity. Our treating mechanisms are much more focused. Those are based on more accurate diagnostic tests. The time to culture is accelerated and so on. And in the instance of a newborn, many times there isn't the time to wait for specificity. And it may come to a surprise to many of you, but there are things that we test for in the event of a newborn infant routinely as a matter of course. Communicable diseases, blood type, RHO status, and so on. And the intent here is not to set someone up to take the criminal fall or to become a felon. It's really to make sure that we're rendering the appropriate treatment for a specific diagnosis at what is the most critical point in a newborn's life. We could make the error of treating for something and causing an irreversible condition if we only had the knowledge with which to treat with specificity based on a definite diagnosis and not taking a guess or a blind shot in the dark. We will always try and err. We can treat any symptom, we can do supportive things, but I can't tell you how dramatic a difference it makes when you really know what you're treating versus just taking a guess and making a blind stab in the dark, hoping that through some miracle you get it right. I think it's a tool our healthcare providers need. I know as a physician I would like to have it. There will be unintended consequences that are a potential. If we see those becoming a problem, I think we deal with it here. But I think we've got the potential to really do something right here on the Senate floor today, and I'd encourage you all to support Senate Bill 105 in its current format. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? Do you wish to give a close? Thank you. Senator Soholt, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I would say to the Senate that already medical providers are in the evidence-gathering spot, that by current statute of child abuse and neglect, we are mandatory reporters. And when we see something that puts a baby at risk, when we believe that we are dealing with a situation where they are unsafe, we are mandated by state law to report that. That puts us way beyond evidence gatherers. In this particular situation, we're trying to understand the truth of the matter, that by doing a toxicology test, we can actually avoid doing referrals that are unintended. So I would say there would be less unintended consequences of doing this. And to the comment of this being well-intentioned statute, I would say that this moves way beyond that. This is really statute that understands that there are two competing variables, perhaps the fear of the mother, the fear of the family of coming in, but then also the value of this newborn that absolutely, positively cannot speak for themselves. And when we are trying to reconcile these two values, we always have to move towards the one that has no voice at all. I would ask you to affirm Senate Bill 105.
Thank you. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 105. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Curd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? No. Kennedy? Aye. Klum? Aye. Colbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Peters? Rush? Russell? Soholt? Solano? Stalzer? Sutton? Tiedemann? White? Wick? And Youngberg. Mr. President, there are 31 yeas, 2 nays, and 2 excused.
Senate Bill 105, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any title questions? Hearing none, title's approved. Thank you very much. And again, now we'll take up 64.
Senate Bill 64, an act to revise certain provisions related to attempted human trafficking in the first degree and to provide a penalty therefor.
Senate Bill 64, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Russell, good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Senate Bill 64 comes to you from the Attorney General. It has to do with human trafficking under certain circumstances, and you can see in lines 6 through 10 on the first page of the bill the actual circumstances under which it would come into play, where there is a kidnapping or attempted kidnapping where the victim is under the age of 18 years, where it involves prostitution or procurement for prostitution or results in death to the victim. What the statutory change would be, in essence, is currently in statute, all attempts are, any kind of a penalty is cut in half for an attempt. So in this case, a 25-year potential sentence on a Class 2 felony, if you are convicted of an attempt, you would only be subjected to 12 and a half years potentially in the judge's discretion. What this would do is it would, of course, make it available to the judge for a 25-year sentence and or a $50,000 fine. So what it does is it eliminates attempt, the cutting of the judge's discretion in half if the individual does not actually kidnap the person, does not actually cause the death, or does not actually procure prostitution from the individual. So with that, I would yield and attempt to answer any questions you may or may not have.
Further remarks on 64. I do note that it has prison population cost estimate statement. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 64. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer is excused. Surprise!
You heard all the debate.
Klum. Colbeck. Langer. Maher. Monroe. Nelson. Nessebar. Netherton. Norstrup. Otten. Partridge. Peters. Rush. Russell. Soholt. Solano. Stalzer. Sutton. Tiedemann. White. Wick. And Youngberg. Almost forgot you. Mr. President, there are 34 yeas, 1 excused.
Senate Bill 64, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Title questions? I don't hear any. Former Representative Kent Junkie blending in up there. Good to see you, brother. 78.
Senate Bill 78, an act to revise the membership of the Board of Education standards to include the chairs of the Senate and House Committees on Education.
Senate Bill 78, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Bolin, happy haircut.
Yes, thank you. Yes, indeed. And I think there may be others in the body who also received a haircut as well this last weekend. Senate Bill 78 is a bill that that I'm bringing and the primary reason behind this, essentially the only reason behind this, is a desire to improve communication between the legislature and the State Board of Educational Standards. What this bill would do would be to make the chairman, the people who hold those positions, ex officio members. That means non-voting members of the State Board of Education. It's really quite simple. It's the whole idea behind this, again, is to try to improve communication so that the legislature understands what the State Board of Educational Standards is thinking about, what they might be proposing, so that there just is a sharing of ideas and a better means of communication. I would also just like to say that these meetings are held throughout the year. There is no thought in this bill that members of this body would somehow leave the legislature and go to participate in the meetings that might be held in January, February, or March, but that during the rest of the year they would be available as, again, ex officio, non-voting members to participate in the State Board of Educational Standards. These individuals, and of course at the present time that would be me, would receive the $75 a day that for each meeting you attend, and there would be a small, tiny little bit of expense for travel, those type of things. But I think this is a good, reasonable bill. It was supported by the Department of Education in committee. They came and testified in favor of the bill. There was no opposing testimony. So I would encourage your favorable vote on Senate Bill 78, a bill that's designed to improve communication between the legislature and the very important State Board of Education. Stand by for any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Bolin. Matakapi, Senator Heinert.
Mitakapi, Mr. President. Well, I just would like to point out to the body that you saw one nay vote in this, and that was me. I listened to the testimony, and I just want to throw a couple things out there. So if we were to enact this, and one thing we don't know is who is going to be the chair of these committees. You know, we don't know that from election to election. You know, hopefully we would think that Senate Education and House Education, the chairs of those committees, would have some sort of education background. But there's nothing guaranteeing that. And the State Board of Ed, or Board of Educational Standards as they're now known, those are educational professionals. And I worry that if we have the chairs of those committees sitting in on those meetings, and that it might stymie conversation. I'm not saying it will, but it could. If somehow they get to talking, and we're talking about graduation requirements, or changing the standards, or adopting different standards, and the chairman of our committee say, well, you know, that's not going to go anywhere in the legislature. And that gives me a little bit of pause as to, do we really need this? And then I guess lastly, I think when we have our committee hearings, you know, obviously we are pitched on both sides of the issue, but we try to remain pretty neutral. I think for most of us, we try to hear it, you know, as upfront as we can. And with the chairs of those committees being part of this, I don't want to give the impression that, well, whatever the state board is going to do, the chair already knows what's going to happen, and he's going to wrangle, you know, some of those members. He or she's going to wrangle some of those members, and we know what the vote is already. So I'd just like to caution it. I don't think this is I don't think it's really a need. You know, we didn't hear from this board that they want us there. You know, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I don't I don't think it's the best idea. Plamia.
Belania. Further remarks? Senate Bill 78. Senator Curd, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I understand the intent of my colleague, and I think it's well-intentioned, as has been mentioned by the previous speaker. I do want to remind us that the legislature is not supposed to be in any fashion involved in setting content standards or curriculum. That's not our purview. That's certainly vested in the Board of Education. And although I don't believe that that's the intent as proposed here, I think potentially putting a chair of the Education Committee from the House or the Senate on the committee, even in an ex officio role, could start to blur the lines slightly and muddy the water about influence and the ability to help drive the discussion about content standards and or curriculum that derives from said content standards. Certainly any member of the public is probably welcome to attend the Board of Education content and subject matter meetings and also their curriculum discussions. And I know our committee chairs have been invited in the past, so I don't see that they're excluded now. But although the bill, I think, is well-intentioned and I understand my colleague's motivation, it does give me pause when I consider the appearance of muddying the distinction between the Board of Education and the legislature. Separate but equal branches, I think it's a line that certainly merits some discussion about maintaining as a clear demarcation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Curd. Further remarks? Senator Cronin, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a little more on what the leader just spoke about. I had the same idea to do something similar to this. When we came back in December, Appropriations Committee had to vote up or down on the Accountability Board's recommendations on the new money to the education, okay? And so I didn't necessarily agree with everything they did, but there really wasn't anything we could do. Some of the people said, well, this was the intent of the law, and I said, well, that's your interpretation of it, but my intent is a little bit different. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and we'll just get some legislation. We'll put a couple legislators on there. Then I got to thinking a little more. I'm passing the law, and because I'm upset about how it's being implemented, I go appoint myself to the board as well. Now, whether it's a voting member or not, there's influence there. So I understand the need to want to have someone there, but I kind of look at it as a conflict of interest more than anything. So I would, I understand, I had the same exact thoughts, but my rationale, which I don't think anybody here needs to try and copy, but I had come around just thinking to myself, I'm doing this because I didn't like the way things got done, and that's why I stepped away from it. And that's my personal take on it, and so I won't be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Senator Monroe. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I agree with the speaker previous to the previous one. And this is a great idea. Living in Pierre here, when you go to a board meeting of any kind, it's transportation board, you can pick your board. There is nobody in that room except for the people whose job it is to be in that room because they work for the people on the board, they work for the department and to a department secretary or something like that. They're obligated to be there based on their job or a particular special interest they're discussing that day. Nobody really knows what's going on in these board meetings, guaranteed. In fact, I don't. And so it's more than useful to take an interested party, which is the legislator. We're interested in all the issues. At least we've got eyes in there, whether they have opinions or not. It's a direct line to the legislature with good information if there is any that needs to come up. And I know that reduces the chance that we can have a board that just kind of does whatever they want without having to account for anybody during the year or during the whole decade. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Monroe. Further remarks? Does anybody wish to speak before Senator Bolin gives his closing? Senator Bolin, I think you were the previous speaker.
I believe I was.
Okay,
I believe
good.
I was. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I would just like to emphasize again, these individuals, whoever they would be, are ex officio. They are not. They do not have a vote. They would not have any power to determine policy. They would have no power to determine policy, determine standards, any of those things. And I would not accept the notions of the good majority leader and of the assistant minority leader. I think this is a worthy idea, and I believe that this has the potential to, again, to improve communications. Obviously, it's going to come down to the spirit, the attitude, and the ability of the person who is who would be the chair of the Senate Ed or our House Ed committee. But I would believe this is a very worthy idea. I will also say this as well, that in the summer, I talked specifically to the previous Secretary of Education, and I will not reveal necessarily her thoughts, but now she is retired. But I did not just bring this without first consulting at that time, the Secretary of Education. And again, I would remind the members of the body that the current Secretary of Education did testify in favor of this bill. I thank you.
Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 78. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Senator Bolin? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? No. Kurd? No. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? No. Greenfield? Pardon? Haverly? No. Heinert? No. Jensen? No. Kennedy? No. Killer?
Senator Boomerang?
No. He voted no. Klum? Colbeck? Langer? Maher? Monroe? Nelson? Nesseba? Netherton? Norstrup? Otten? Partridge? No. Peters? No. Rush? No. Russell? Aye. Soholt? No. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? No. Tiedemann? No. White? No. Wick? No. And Youngberg? Mr. President, there are 15 yeas, 19 nays, and 1 excused.
Senate Bill 78, having failed to receive a majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared lost. On behalf of Senator Nelson, would you join me in welcoming the Armor Senior Government class and Caitlin Todd, who's with them, Armor Senior Government, along with Senator Nelson up there. Glad to have you here, Armor. Great city. Please proceed.
Senate Bill 28, an act to make an appropriation for costs related to suppression of wildfires in the state and to declare an emergency.
Senate Bill 28, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Haverly, an appropriate individual to speak on this topic. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 28 makes an appropriation for costs related to the suppression of wildfires in the state and declares an emergency. I know you're all familiar with the Legion Lake fire in Custer this last fall, as well as this past weekend there was a 150-acre fire on Bear Butte, which is now contained. The Wildland Fire Division within the Department of Agriculture conducts fire management within the state. Its Fire Suppression Special Revenue Fund has run negative due to costs associated with fighting fires in South Dakota. The fund will remain negative and grow negative more negative, until an appropriation is approved. There's a cost-share agreement for most fires, but the state retains responsibility to pay for their share of the firefighting efforts. This appropriation is the state's portion of the cost. Currently, the division spends the necessary funds to combat, mitigate, and assist with wildfires throughout the state. Through this backfill appropriation, this bill balances the fund when necessary. Of course, we all know that there's no reasonable way to determine how much money is going to be spent each year on fire suppression. So instead of appropriating a set fund, the fire suppression fund is spent into the red and then balanced with this bill. It's not brought on an annual basis. It's rather introduced once the fund reaches a significant negative balance, which clearly it has. This bill will appropriate $766,157 of general funds to ensure the state continues to have funds to fight fires. I must mention this does not include the cost of the Legion Lake Fire in Custer State Park, as they're working still towards finalizing the state share of that cost, and obviously it does not include the Bear Butte fire. I would ask for your support of Senate Bill 28.
Thank you, Senator Haverly. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 28. It is an emergency clause along with the appropriation, therefore requires a 2/3 majority vote for passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Bolin? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Aye. Klum? Aye. Kolbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Aye. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. Youngberg? Aye. Mr. President, there are 33 yeas, 2 excused.
Senate Bill 28, having received a 2/3 majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any title questions? I'll approve the title then. Thank you.
Senate Bill 45, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the sale of unclaimed property.
Senate Bill 45, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Wick, good afternoon, sir.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. President. Senators, I bring today for your thoughtful consideration Senate Bill 45. If you recall, last year this legislature changed the way we manage our unclaimed property. If a stock certificate is surrendered to the state of South Dakota, our 2017 state law mandates that the stock be sold within 90 days of confirmed receipt to our state treasurer. As the year has passed, the governor's office, the Bureau of Finance and Management, and our state treasurer's office has made several process changes, including sending letters to all last known addresses and reaching out to alternative and social media to find our unclaimed property owners. While engaged in these new processes, our treasurer has learned that occasionally when dealing with those who reside in foreign countries and some difficult to locate property holders, sometimes 90 days is just not enough time. That brings us to Senate Bill 45. This bill will increase the mandatory sale date from 90 days to 180 days. This still keeps the state unclaimed stock portfolio at a manageable level, while allowing the treasurer ample time to contact a potential owner and will help to limit any potential exposure to legal action. Please support Senate Bill 45. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wick. Further remarks? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 45. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Senator Bolin? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Aye. Haverly? Aye. Heinert? Aye. Jensen. Kennedy. Killer. Klum. Colbeck. Langer. Maher. Monroe. Nelson. Nesseba. Netherton. Norstrup. Otten. Partridge. Peters. Rush. Russell. Soholt. Solano. Stalzer. Sutton. Tiedemann. White. Wick. Youngberg. Cronin. Mr. President, there are 34 yeas, 1 excused.
Senate Bill 45, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Title questions? I approve the title then.
Senate Bill 48, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to purchase improved agricultural real property in Meade County, to make an appropriation therefore, and to declare an emergency.
Senate Bill 48, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. I would have lost that bet. Senator Partridge, good to see you.
Why, thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 48 authorizes the Board of Regents and SDSU to purchase 111 tillable acres of improved property in Meade County. SDSU focuses on research and farming strategies in western South Dakota and plans to use this land for such activities. The acquisition replaces the research and demonstration land that had previously been rented near Wall, South Dakota. Experiments can be multi-year, sometimes even up to 10 years, and so this land will ensure continuity of the service to the South Dakota agriculture community and the business thereof. The purchase will be funded from Research Park payout and fees for service at the Ag Experiment Station. I encourage your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 48.
Senator Kamak, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
I just didn't jump up quick enough.
Yes.
Members of the Senate, this is just an excellent opportunity for SDSU to do a good job of research, but also a good job of showcasing the research that they're doing. This location is on a paved highway, and so it's going to make it very accessible and easy for public events, and so I encourage your support.
It's excellent. Further remarks?
Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Maher.
Question for the sponsor.
Oh, please state your question.
This is a legitimate question. Believe it or not, I do legitimately have a question. Does the property come off the tax rolls once it's
Senator
acquired?
Partridge, do you care to answer the question? Does the property come off the tax rolls? No, he doesn't wish to answer the question. Does anybody else wish to? Senator Maher, you have the floor. Okay. We don't know, quash debate, but it was. You just can't help yourself. So I didn't lose the bet. Senator Tiedemann.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's an excellent question. Yes, it would come off the tax rolls because it becomes state property. But the best news is that when you develop those new varieties and put those varieties out across the state, especially in western South Dakota, you increase the tax revenue coming in.
Further remarks? For the students here too, the money doesn't come from tax dollars. It's called other fund, but it requires, this is a purchase, and requires an emergency clause. We have to have 2/3 of the individuals support this. So, further remarks, hearing none, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 48 requires a 2/3 majority vote for passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Boland. Kamak. Cronin. Kurd. Ewing. Frerichs. Greenfield. Haverly. Heinert. Jensen. Kennedy. Pardon? Killer? Klum? Colbeck? Langer? Maher? Monroe? Nelson? Nesseba? Netherton? Norstrup? Otten? Partridge? Peters? Rush? Russell? Soholt? Solano? Stalzer? Sutton? Tiedemann? White? Wick? Youngberg? Jensen? Mr. President, there are 31 yeas, 3 nays, and 1 excused.
Senate Bill 48, having received a two-thirds majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Title questions? I'll approve the title then. Thank you.
Senate Bill 49, an act to authorize the Board of Regents to purchase unimproved agricultural real estate in Brookings County and to make an appropriation therefor.
Senate Bill 49, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? This would not be my day. I would lose this bet, too. Senator Cronin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 49 appropriates the Board of Regents and South Dakota State University to purchase just a little over 73 acres of land, tillable property in Brookings County. This property's been rented by the SDSU experimental station for many years now, and they've been using it in experiment station projects. It's already off the tax roll. This won't change anything. Why this bill's necessary is when, I think it was 2006, the South Dakota State University Research Park was built on some of the experiment station ground. And part of the agreement was once they made up the funds and got a payment ready, they would send it out, and the Ag Experiment Station could then purchase land to replace what they had already lost. This land that we're buying has been rented. It's $665,000, like I said, to have that land under the control of SDSU and the extension station. Currently, it is owned by the South Dakota Crop Improvement Association, which has been holding it until the Ag Experiment Station could get enough money to purchase it themselves. So with that, I'd ask for your support.
Further remarks? Hearing no further remarks, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 49. It requires a two-thirds majority vote for passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Bolin? Kamak? Cronin? Kurd? Ewing? Frerichs? Greenfield? Haverly? Heinert? Jensen? Kennedy? Killer? Klum? Kolbeck? Langer? Maher? Monroe? Nelson? Nesseba? Netherton? Norstrup? Otten? Partridge? Peters? Rush? Russell? Soholt? Solano? Stalzer? Sutton? Tiedemann? White? Wick? Youngberg? Mr. President, there are 32 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 excused.
Senate Bill 49, having received a two-thirds majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Title's approved. And Boots, you really don't have to pronounce the next words. You just say, oh, have you practiced? Okay.
Senate Bill 55, an act to revise certain provisions regarding the tax on endoparasiticides and ectoparasiticides.
Woo! Anybody want some gummy bears and gummy worms? Senate Bill 55, oh yes, having received second reading is up for consideration and final passage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Tiedemann.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. Just a little history on Senate Bill 55. It goes back to 1990, actually the early 1990s, when they were looking at remodeling the Animal Disease Diagnostic and Research Laboratory, trying to find funding sources for that, as well as the M&R within the ADRDL. So at that time, they took off the exemption on the endoparasiticides and the ectoparasiticides for the tax. So the tax now became eligible and it brought in money. But nobody could come up with how many dollars come in on those two taxes, both the sales and the use tax. The companies that sell those products did not want to divulge how many of those products they were selling in the state. So numbers were picked up that $250,000 would go towards the M&R of the ADRDL, and $500,000 would go towards the veterinary slots that were at Iowa State University. Usually about 6 students each year get to go into that university, and this fund pays the difference in in-state and out-of-state tuition. So it doesn't pay the whole tuition. Those veterinary students that graduate have an obligation to come back in South Dakota and practice. If they choose not to come back to South Dakota, they have to repay this loan or this money that's been given to them. Well, this past year, legislative audit, in their normal process, now realize this has been going on since 1992-93, they did an audit and they found a problem that it was not designated to a specific fund. So this bill will change it so that the dollars will go directly from revenue, who collects the tax, into a fund with the Board of Regents. It's a wash on the numbers of dollars. The $250,000 will be used towards the M&R at ADRDL, and $642,768 will be used towards that tuition difference. So I urge your support of moving this bill forward so that we can correct the audit that was found. Thank you.
It was, of course, a very good explanation. Further remarks? The reason I said that is it does not require a 2/3 majority vote, as the senator indicated, because it'll be part of the general bill appropriations discussion. Hearing no further remarks, the question before the Senate is final passage of Senate Bill 55. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Boland? Kamak? Cronin? Kurd? Ewing? Frerichs? Greenfield? Haverly? Heinert? Jensen? Kennedy? Killer? Klum? Kolbeck? Langer? Maher? Monroe? Nelson? Nesseba? Netherton? Norstrup? Otten? Partridge? Peters? Rush? Russell? Soholt? Solano? Stalzer? Sutton? Tiedemann? White? Wick? Youngberg? Nelson? Norstrup? Mr. President, there are 30 yeas, 4 nays, and 1 excused.
Senate Bill 55, having received a majority vote of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any title questions? Titles approved then. Second reading of House bills.
House Bill 1041, an act to revise certain provisions regarding insurers' internal audit requirements.
Thank you. House Bill 1041, having received a second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Senator Kennedy,
Thank
good
you,
day
Mr.
again, sir.
President. I am here to present House Bill 1041 at the request of the Committee on Commerce and Energy and at their request, at the request of the Department of Labor and Regulation. House Bill 1041 amends South Dakota Codified Law Chapter 5843 with an update that requires large insurance companies to have an internal audit function in place. The internal audit function provides independent and objective feedback to the company's board of directors on governance, management, and internal controls. This function is designed to assist the board of directors in evaluating the company and management's ability to protect assets, effectiveness, and efficiency of controls, as well as overall compliance with policies and regulations. Now, this bill will only affect large insurance companies. Insurance companies with less than $500 million in premium and insurance company groups with less than $1 billion in premiums are exempted from the coverage of this bill. The companies doing business in South Dakota that would be impacted by this update are already required in other states to comply with this act or have internal audit processes in place today as part of their business model. HB 1041 follows model law established by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners and is important in maintaining South Dakota's financial accreditation. The Department of Labor and Regulation asks for your support of House Bill 1041. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Further remarks? Hearing no further remarks, the question before the Senate is final passage of House Bill 1041. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Madam Secretary, you please call the roll.
Senator Boland? Aye. Kamak? Aye. Cronin? Aye. Kurd? Aye. Ewing? Aye. Frerichs? Aye. Greenfield? Haverly? Aye. Einert? Aye. Jensen? Aye. Kennedy? Aye. Killer? Aye. Plum? Aye. Colbeck? Aye. Langer? Aye. Maher? Aye. Monroe? Aye. Nelson? Aye. Nesseba? Aye. Netherton? Aye. Norstrup? Aye. Otten? Aye. Partridge? Yes. Peters? Aye. Rush? Aye. Russell? Aye. Soholt? Aye. Solano? Aye. Stalzer? Aye. Sutton? Aye. Tiedemann? Aye. White? Aye. Wick? Aye. Youngberg? Aye. Greenfield?
Excuse me, please.
Mr. President, there are 33 yeas to excuse.
House Bill 1041, having received a majority vote of the members elected, is hereby declared passed. I'll approve the title. I have a couple of bills to sign here. Before actually I just have one. When we did a re-referral, senators, of a couple of bills, there was already action taken on them, and LRC had requested that, so that's what Senator Greenfield was off trying to figure out why they requested that, because we're going to have to correct the journal. So the President is signing an act to revise certain provisions regarding the South Dakota Board of Technical Education. That's Senate Bill 18. I'd like to remind us tomorrow, Senator Partridge was kind enough to remind me, is tomorrow is sneaker day for American Cancer Society. So, do your duty there, get some sneakers going. Do I have any other bills to sign? Are we good? What's that? Okay, I'll sign that when we're done. Let's do announcements then. Senator Ewing, good day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate State Affairs, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for 14.
Thank you. Senator Soholt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Health and Human Services, 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Senator Partridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am pleased to announce our inaugural meeting of the Senate Military Affairs Committee, room 413, 3 o'clock or right after session.
Thank you. Senator Boland. Tomorrow, yeah. Senator Boland, did you? Oh, Senator Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be no Senate taxation meeting tomorrow.
That's leadership. Senator Otten.
Transportation, 8:30.
8:30 tomorrow. Transportation. Youngberg.
Senate Local Government, 9 a.m., room 412.
9 a.m. Senator Boland.
And thank you. Tonight, 8 o'clock, Perkins Capital Commission Bible Study. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Wick.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Your Joint Committee on Appropriations will continue our two-day hearing from the Board of Regents tomorrow, 8 a.m.
Yeah, it will. At least it'll be noted verbally, and so. Thank you. Senator Northrup, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Northrup Whip Group will meet in 10 minutes, and we'll meet in the office right next to the Doctor of the Day's office. So 10 minutes right next to the office for the Doctor of the Day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Greenfield, while you were up there, I'd indicated that there was an issue relative to the re-referral. We would like for you to go on the record on what you found, please.
Thank you, President. I would also like a personal privilege, if I could, Mr. President. Sure. I would like the body to note that that today is Representative Greenfield's birthday. And I don't know that I've ever had the opportunity or taken the opportunity to note on January 30th that it is her birthday. So if you should see her tonight, please greet her with warm birthday greetings. Mr. President, members of the body, we had a motion earlier today. We had been notified last week by the Executive Director of LRC that some of the bills that had been referred to joint appropriations more appropriately should have been referred to Senate appropriations. The motion today to re-refer 10 bills to Senate appropriations would have been fine and good. However, one of those bills had already passed this body, and one of those bills subsequently passed this body. Senate Bill 40 is already in the House's possession. Senate Bill 55 passed today. In my discussion with the Executive Director of the LRC, he believes that it's essentially moot. We didn't have any authority over Senate Bill 40, and we've since given up our authority over Senate Bill 55. As I said, both bills had come out of joint appropriations, so I wouldn't expect that anything would have changed. But just note, and I want to state for the record, that they will be denoting in the journal something relative to Senate Bills 40 and 55. We're just not exactly sure how they're going to handle it. But those are now in the House's possession, and only 8 bills will be transferred from joint appropes to Senate appropes. Thank you.
That was good. In either case, it's moot or mute, depending on how you're feeling. And if anyone is listening in trying to figure out the relationship between Representative Greenfield and Senator Greenfield, they're related by birth. Further remarks? Okay. Well, that's rock and roll. Motion to adjourn.
Senator Haverly moves that the Senate do now adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. We are adjourned.